G'day everyone and welcome to this quick video on your 12 Legal Studies crime report. This is your first assessment task, so I thought what I'd do is go through and film me talking about it so that if you guys want to go back and check it out, it'll help you guys really come to terms with what you're being asked to do. So let's do this. Here's the report. Let's go through it bit by bit. First of all, some really important things to remember. It's due Wednesday 22nd of November. Don't forget that date. You are required to hand it in to me, period 0, in class, emailed at 8 a.m. You'll see later on. Word count 15 to 1800 words. If you're able to write concisely, then feel free to write 1500 words, but I personally would want to use all the words that I've given you to make sure that you do everything as detailed as possible. But that's just me. Now, what am I actually asking you to do? You're required to research an indictable criminal offence. So note that, can't be a summary offence. This has to be a serious offence which has been prosecuted in the past 15 years. It's got to be in Australia, guys. And the defendant had to be convicted and found guilty. Alright, so that's the main kind of, let that be your checklist. Whenever you find a story, is it an indictable crime? Is it been in the last 15 years? Is it an Australian one? Has it already been convicted? Has the person already been convicted and found guilty? If that's not the case, then pick something else. So, all that research is going to be the basis of your crime report, and I have very clearly laid out what I'm asking you to do. There's the outcomes. I'm going to use those to mark this, so make sure you're down with these and you think to yourself, yep, I can do all those. Now, what am I actually asking you to do? Well, first of all, you're researching and reporting on this crime, and I've helpfully given you dot points of all the things that I'm expecting. So let that be a checklist for you. So I'm checking that you can actually correctly cite the case. If you're unsure, ask me, jump online, have a look. It should be there. You should be able to find it on the Ostly site. Something going on if you can't. Then you've got to think through, what are the 3 elements of the offence? So mens rea, motive, were they caught doing the act, and what was the actual cause of the act? So think through and outline those. No, outline. Don't give me, 90% of it about that. Outline. Then describe the factors that led to the criminal behaviour. So thinking through here, you might say this person had a terrible upbringing, or this person had an alcohol problem or a drug addiction, or whatever it is. This person was in a very love-hate relationship with somebody and pushed it too far. After that, outline the reporting and investigation. So note this. This is not give me a detailed rundown of every single paper that this appeared in, and this is the bias, etc., etc. I'm looking for things like, it was heavily reported in the news in at least 5 publications where most people outlined the vicious nature of the attack. Something to that effect. Then thinking through, what was the role of the courts? What legal representation did the person have? Did they hire a really good lawyer? Was it legal aid? Did the court take place, in a high-profile situation or not? Easiest one, identify the plea. Just tell me if the person said guilty, not guilty. And obviously if they had kind of, guilty with extenuating circumstances, then say that as well. Then I want you to discuss. Note that's the first time that we see a different one here. Look, identify, relatively simple. Outline, describe, outline, identify. Now, discuss. So discuss the factors that affect the sentencing decision. Why did the judge give the sentence that they did? Alright, so you may need to actually read the reasoning from the judge, which you should be able to find here. Why did the person give that sentence? Think through, were there mitigating circumstances? Were there aggravating circumstances? Did they take background into account, etc., etc., etc.? And in doing so, I want you to then explain the penalty given. What do you think? Was justice achieved? Explain why you felt it was or it wasn't. So those two things should lead nicely into each other. And finally, a bit of an analysis. Analyse the extent to which the law balances the rights of victims and offenders in this case. So you're using this case to say, in this example, this is the extent to which the law has balanced the rights of victims and offenders. Okay, so a helpful checklist for you to use to make sure your report has everything it needs to have in it. Now, please note, as this is a research task, you need to have a bibliography. It needs to be correctly filled out. So make sure you check the appendices. At the bottom, I haven't included it in this video, but they're there. Make sure that you get full marks for that. That's easy marks. We're using Harvard referencing system. I've even given you what that looks like on pages 6 and 7 and a marking guide for what should be included. All right, start on a new page. Give it its new page. It's worth 5 marks. All right, what are you going to get assessed on? Well, let's go to this one for this. You're going to be assessed on how well you can conduct, use, and reference relevant material. So that's citing things that should be cited and citing them in the right way. How clear you are when you're reporting on the case as specified in that task description, which is very detailed, no excuse to miss anything there. How well you can present a concise, well-structured and logical report. Okay, use the right headings, use the right subheadings, make sure you've got everything in there, make sure it flows well and it makes sense. On top of that, how well you can integrate, that means kind of mix in so it becomes part of the report, relevant legal concepts and terminology. So think through all the things that we talk about in class in reporting. Think through procedural fairness, all of the mens rea, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I want you to use in-text referencing at least 6 times, guys, for the report this size, and because this is a research task. All right, in class, I'm going to give you 2 lessons to research the offence. You're going to have some spare time at the end of lessons as well. If you finish stuff, you can jump on there. I won't make you hand in the handy sheet that I gave you to fill out to help you stay on track, but it is helpful. You should use it. And then finally, email it to me by 8 a.m. on that date. You're required to hand in a hard copy in case I want to write all over it and encourage you with some feedback. If it's late, penalties apply, etc., etc. All right, moving on quickly. Here's an example. So this is from abc.net.au. Maurice Michelot, man who hurled Queensland officer through window, is jailed for 5 years. So this happened in February this year. This guy, Morris, he threw a police officer through a glass window when he was being arrested, and his lawyer said he was doomed to fail from birth. So from this, hopefully the more perceptive among you are reading it and going, if the lawyer is already talking about the fact that he was doomed to fail from birth, there's a very good chance that the sentence, well not the sentence, sorry, that the crime is going to be relatively clear-cut. He's already trying to mitigate by saying, look, Judge, this guy had it rough. So Maurice Stephen Michelot, 32, is going to serve 25 months behind bars before parole over the attack of Senior Constable Rhys Jarman at Capabala in 2014. Police were called to his property after a domestic disturbance, and when they came, they tried to arrest him, and Michelot became violent. The court heard he punched him and pushed him through a glass window. So straight away, what have we got here? You're assaulting a police officer. Never a good idea. Senior Constable Samantha Schofield tried to use her taser to stop him but failed, so she fired her gun twice and struck him with both bullets. The lawyer, Mal Harrison, so this is the task where we're talking about how he's been represented here. Identify the role of the courts in any legal representation. Mal Harrison says he suffered lung injuries during the shooting and now had a 30-centimetre scar from surgery. Why is that relevant? They're trying to use that as kind of a mitigating factor in the sentence. They're trying to say, look, he's actually suffered already from this, so please don't give him as much as you want to give him. That's the idea. Then it continues. He was born or was doomed to fail from the date of birth, he said. However, prosecutor Diana Kovac said that Jarman, the person thrown, suffered daily psychological issues and had serious arm injuries which still affected him. So we're looking at the impact on the victim there, causation, etc., etc. In the impact statement, Senior Constable Schofield said the incident left her deeply traumatised. I find it hard to enjoy social activities that I used to find myself interested in. Still to this day, I have nightmares at least twice a week, my firearm not working or partner being injured. So there's some, it's an ongoing impact for the constable. The judge said police had behaved bravely and courageously while arresting Mikolo. This was lawful force employed by a police officer. So the judge is saying that the officer did the right thing in shooting him. Police officers serve the community. They perform an important daily function. They were doing their job. They certainly did not deserve to be treated the way you treated them. So the judge is not having any of it and has sentenced him to 5 years, basically. So, if I'm doing this as a report, I'm going to sit through and think through each of these cases. R versus Mikolo, whatever the date was, February 2017. Outline the elements of the effect, include mens rea. So, you'd talk about the motive. Well, obviously, domestic disturbance. Mr. Mikolo is very angry. He doesn't want to be arrested. He gets violent. Actus reus, we've got both officers being able to prove that he did it. Causation, yes, this caused the injuries to Officer Jarman, etc., etc., etc. Describe the factors that led to the criminal behaviour. So his lawyer talks about his life, he was doomed to fail. He's obviously had a rough time of it, etc., etc. And obviously he's quite angry at the time as well because it's a domestic dispute which was violent enough for them to be called in the first place and want to arrest him. Finally, outline the reporting and investigation of the crime. You'd have to do some more research there. See if there were earlier things. See if, basically, here you want to go, okay, well, I know he's been convicted. What happened first? Was there an earlier report when he had, when the actual case was on? So that's going to take more research there in identifying the role of the courts and legal representation, as well as reporting and investigation of the crime. You can't do that from one single source. Identify the plea. I don't think we got that from this because this was the sentencing hearing. So the same thing, I'm going to have to go and look and find related sources about earlier on during the actual trial. Discuss the factors that affect the sentencing decision. So impact is obviously talked about. The fact that they're doing their job and the fact that they're police officers, I would say, all affected the impact for Mr. Mikolo. That's what you can infer from what the judge has said. Explain the penalty given was justice achieved. 5 years is a fairly long time. So you might want to say, yes, justice has been achieved, but, then you analyse the extent to which the law balances the rights of victims and offenders. You could talk about what police officers have to go through, whether or not 5 years is a justifiable sentence, whether it should have been more or less depending on the circumstances, etc., etc. So hopefully that was a relatively long-winded but helpful discussion into the crime report that you need to do and hand in to me. All right, bye.